Hello and welcome to Mental Health Hour. It's 2024. Feels like it's been 2024 for like 15 months. This is the thing about the month of January. It's really, really long. I was just saying to a friend of mine, it feels like Christmas was 6 months ago, not barely 3 weeks ago. Um, so, in a way, time flies, but it also crawls. And here we are, Mental Health Hour in 2024, our first session this year. Really excited to be here. Hello to you across the globe. Happy New Year. I'm wishing you a wonderful 2024. I hope it started off on a good note. I hope it continues with a good note. And 12 months from now or so, we'll be finishing it off on a good note. So I'm Dr. Tapo, and before I go any further, just a reminder that this mental health hour is for educational and information purposes only. Please do not take this as treatment and not go and look for help with a qualified professional within your area. So please, this is for information, this is for education, but seek the help that you need with a qualified professional within your jurisdiction, within your area, within your community. And many thanks to Love Bay Radio for providing this platform. You can email us at infolovebay@gmail.com, infolovebay@gmail.com, or you can text and call 437-778-3299, 437-778-3299. It's always a pleasure to hear from you from right across the globe. We've had messages from, I think at this point, every continent, which is just really affirming and wonderful and humbling in many ways. So thanks to everyone that has written in, that has texted us, that has contributed. Your contributions are meaningful on the Mental Health Hour. Okay, so we do have a number of questions and comments from 2023 that we didn't address last year, and we've already started receiving some new questions and comments this side of the year. It would be good, and I think I encourage people to get in touch, ask your questions, let us know what topics you would like us to cover here on the Mental Health Hour. Okay, so I'm going to go into those comments. Like I said, we get questions and comments from around the globe. But today we're going to start right here in Ontario, in Mississauga. This morning it was snowing, the ground is frozen, there's snow everywhere. It's chilly. It's really, really cold. And I had the privilege of spending my Christmas vacation in a warm, humid climate. It was so wonderful. And I came back to this freezing cold. Yay, Canada. I wish somebody would buy me a ticket to the tropics. I would appreciate that. Okay, we're in Mississauga. And Anonymous writes, I've been listening to your show for almost a year and only now mustered the courage to write to you. So thanks to this anonymous writer in Mississauga who says, I live in Canada and have been married for 28 years. My wife and I were not on good terms. I had an affair that produced a son. He is now 17 years old. His mom passed away last year and he now lives with his aunt. My wife knows about him, but I can't get over my guilt. She said I could bring him to our home, but I just can't. I don't want to affect my son's mental health. Guilt is crushing me. My wife and I have one daughter and she's 27. So this man and his wife have been married for 28 years. They've had some rocky times. And I think what he's saying is during one of his rocky times, with his wife. He had an affair, and he has a 17-year-old son from that affair. And he has a 27-year-old daughter with his wife. So his son's mother passed away, and his son is living with his aunt. But this man's wife has said to him she doesn't mind if he brings his son home. But this man is saying, I can't. He feels too guilty. I don't want to affect my son's mental health. Guilt is crushing me. My wife and I have one daughter. She's 27. So what I'm seeing here is, I have to say it, you seem to only be focusing on you, your guilt, your feelings about it. You're saying you don't want to affect my son's mental health. I'm not sure how your son's mental health will be affected by living with his father, especially after his other parent, his mom, has passed away. It looks to me like you would rather give the responsibility of looking after your son to somebody else. I don't know what your relationship with this boy has been, but he's only 17 years old and he's living with his aunt, but his father is using the excuse of guilt to not look after him. I think that's affecting his mental health already. Not only is he dealing with the grief of his mom passing away, but chances are he's also now struggling with feelings of rejection because his father won't bring him into his home. I don't know if your 27-year-old daughter currently lives with you, but even if she does, this boy is your son. Your wife has given her approval, but you're feeling guilty. The thing about guilt is, and we've talked about it before, guilt is it's a selfish feeling. And as long as we're holding on to it, we can't make amends, we can't move forward, we can't make room for anything else. And with that guilt, often guilt and shame, they're like co-joined twins. Guilt and shame. So maybe it's more shame rather than guilt that you're feeling. Either way, these are selfish feelings. They focus on you rather than on the boy that right now needs his father, rather than the woman who has forgiven you and invited this boy into the home. You're focusing on your guilt. I would suggest you get over it and do what's best for that boy. I don't want to affect my son's mental health. I really don't understand how you stepping up as his father, offering him a space in your home and in your family, how that will affect his mental health. I think you don't want to face every day the consequence of your affair. And I think it's wrong that you still look at this boy as a consequence, because I see it even in the way you worded, I had an affair that produced a son. You're looking at him and viewing him and treating him as a consequence rather than as a child. I really, really think, Anonymous in Mississauga, you need to get over yourself, your guilt, your shame, and step up and be the father that this 17-year-old needs. And you need to stop looking at him as a consequence and see him as a child, your child, your child. Unless you're saying that somehow you think your wife will mistreat him, I don't know. She's saying you can bring him into the home, but you're the one who's making the decision not to, because you're looking at this boy as a consequence rather than as your son, rather than as a child who needs comforting as he's grieving the loss of his mother, who needs his dad. You really, really, really need to get over yourself, because it's not even about you anymore. It stopped being about you when you had that boy 17 years ago. You need to step up. Okay, so we'll move on from Mississauga, but let's stay in Ontario. Owen Sound. Owen Sound is in Ontario, Canada, and we have Claudia from Owen Sound who says, my husband drinks every evening when he gets home from work. His affair with alcohol is affecting our marriage. Our sex life seems to be non-existent, as most nights he's inebriated. I'm getting tired of this. He says he's not an alkie and he only drinks due to stress. How can I deal with this effectively and save my marriage? So thank you to Claudia, who is sharing the frustration of living with somebody who is addicted to alcohol. Whether you drink for fun, for stress, for whatever, it's not the reason why you're drinking that's really important at this stage. It's how much you're drinking and the impact of that drinking on your health, on your relationships, even on your finances, because it's not like alcohol is cheap. So I think, Claudia, the unfortunate thing is there's not much you can do about it. I would say for yourself, if this is causing you depression, anxiety, whatever it is, you can seek counseling for yourself, because I can imagine how much this is impacting your mental health. So start by looking after yourself, after your health. This might be stressing you out, and prolonged stress is just not good for you. So prioritize your health, your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health. Prioritize dealing with the stress and go for therapy for yourself. As for your husband, he has to come to a point where he needs to get the help for himself as well. If he's not admitting that he has a problem, that's difficult. And I've seen in a lot of situations where one spouse keeps trying to show the other that they have a problem, and that just makes the marriage a battlefield, because one person won't admit there's a problem and the other person keeps trying to drill it into them that there's a problem. So you're fighting all the time. Claudia, you've probably said everything you can say at this point. It's time to focus on you. Get the help that you need to cope with what's going on in your home and in your marriage. Equip yourself. Build the skills and competencies you need to deal with stress, to take care of your own mental, physical, emotional, even spiritual health, and focus on yourself. You said everything you can say. I don't know how long you've been married. I don't know how long this has been going on. Maybe it's fairly recent. Maybe it's been building up over a long period of time, and you've just now realized how bad things are. Without that background, there's not much else I can suggest, but I would start with self-care. Are you managing the stress? Are you managing the relationship tensions and and difficulties? How is it affecting you? Get the help you need. And sometimes what happens is when you start getting the help for yourself, it equips you to help your partner in a more compassionate but also strategic way. So it's not just you always angry, disappointed, discouraged, in despair, fatigued, because when things have been going on for a while, it's difficult to address them in a constructive and positive way. Like I can tell from the way you're saying, I'm getting tired of this. You've probably said that to him a million times. It's not changing anything. Focus on yourself. Make you the priority right now. Are you healthy? Are you coping with stress? Are you in a good place? And then maybe you can be able to help him. But again, there's very little you can do if he's not willing to do anything about his problem. And the thing about marriage, I just said his problem, but it becomes your problem as well, because that's what marriage is, right? You're not immune, you're not separated, there's no fence that separates you from what he's doing. You're married, you're living in the same home, you're in the same relationship. So just as much as he needs help, so do you. So prioritize yourself and get help for yourself. Check in with a mental health counselor, therapist. You can even consult with an addictions expert who might give you some tips and strategies on, first of all, how to cope with your husband's addiction, and then how to support him in getting the help that he needs. Sometimes we get to a point where we think this person can't possibly love me, because why are they doing this to me? You start to feel that the addiction is your spouse or your partner doing this to you. But you need to separate yourself from his behavior by focusing on your well-being, your health, your safety, your stress management, because only then can you be more supportive and strategic in how you help him. If you try and do that from a place of frustration and hurt and fatigue and emotional burnout, you're not going to be very effective, and it's going to get worse, not only for you but for him as well. Sometimes our efforts to drive our spouses and partners to different behavior just drives them deeper into the very behavior that's destroying our relationships. So we need to know how we can help them without taking on that emotional stress and breakage onto ourselves. Okay, so Claudia and Owen Sound, go seek counseling for yourself. While you're at it, consult with an addictions counselor. You can let them know, I have a husband who's an alcoholic. I'm trying to figure out how I can best support him to get the help that he needs. Okay. Let's see, do we have anything more from Canada? There is an unknown here. And sticking with the theme of alcoholism, we have Diane, who wrote and said, what is the real definition of alcoholism? People throw around these terms so nonchalantly. Is it having a drink or two or three a day? I'm a bartender and I have 2 to 3 drinks after my shift. I listened to one of your shows earlier in 2023 and it piqued my curiosity. So alcoholism, and this is the thing, a lot of people don't consider themselves alcoholics because they're not stumbling in the streets, they're not loud and abusive when they drink. A lot of people say, well, I'm just a social drinker. which means they're out there socializing every night, drinking. Alcoholism, what it is a dependency on alcohol. You cannot go to sleep without drinking. And often what happens is you might start with, oh, I'll just have a glass of wine every night before bed. And eventually that one glass turns to two, turns to three, turns to a bottle. And you find yourself drinking earlier and earlier during the day, not just at night before I go to sleep. But it's the fact that you have developed a dependency on alcohol. You have to have a drink. And your tolerance for alcohol is getting higher and higher. So you start drinking harder stuff and drinking larger quantities. You're a bartender, Diane. I don't know if you started with 2 or 3 drinks after your shift, but soon it will be 3 or 4 drinks, and then 4 or 5 drinks, and then we just lose count. But it's the fact that you have developed a dependency. You cannot go without drinking. Some people will say, well, I only drink on the weekends, so I might not be an alcoholic. Binge drinking is when you drink a huge amount in a very short time. And a lot of young people tend to do that, especially those working in university, and that from Monday to Friday, because you're busy with work and school and whatever, you don't touch any alcohol at all. And then the weekend come and you drink yourself stupid. So when we talk about alcoholism, what we're really talking about is that dependency on it. You cannot enjoy yourself without a drink. You cannot go to sleep without a drink. There's a I cannot without a drink somewhere in your life. Some people will go for months without touching alcohol. But when they do, they find it very, very difficult to stop. And they do the work and they stop. But as soon as they start again, it becomes another difficult journey to stop. So alcoholism can look very different in people. But what it boils down to is that dependency and that built up tolerance to alcohol. That's the best place to start. Is there, I cannot without a drink in my life? I cannot sleep. I cannot go out. I cannot socialize. I cannot calm down. I cannot anything without a drink. That signals a problem. And how much you're drinking is also problematic. And this topic of alcoholism, we covered it in detail, but it's really one of the things that keeps coming back because we don't want to talk about it. And when we watch even TV shows, they're sitting in their office, they pour themselves a drink. They get home, they pour a drink. They're having dinner, they pour a drink. Before they go to sleep, it's a nightcap. So even entertainment has normalized alcoholism. People should not be drinking that much in any given day. It's almost like you have a reason to drink in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and before bed. Again, that dependency. You can't feel calm, you can't relax without a drink. That's dependency. You can't cope with something without a drink. That's dependency. You can't socialize without a drink. That's dependency. So start off with, is there a reason in my life, in any aspect of it, is there a reason I cannot cope without a drink? Then you have an issue. So, Diane, I would say cut out the drinks after your shift and see how that goes. I don't know why you drink 2 or 3 drinks after your shift. Maybe you're thinking, this is how I relax. But why are you not able to relax without a drink? That speaks to dependency. Okay. All right. So let's move on. Um, we'll stay in North America and move to Sacramento, California. Dolores in California says, can I plan some self care activities that can make me feel good and replenish my energy? I don't know, Dolores. Can you? I'm not sure what your question is exactly. But you also say, I get distracted very easily and change my mind very often. Are you distracted from the self care and changing your mind about the self care? Please write back to us and clarify your question a little more. Um, Self care activities definitely will make you feel good and replenish your energy. That's the goal. But beyond that, self care is not just about activities targeted at feeling good and replenishing your energy. Like I always say, self care is about how you treat yourself, how you handle things, boundaries in relationships. There's so many aspects of self care that we need to focus on apart from activities that make us feel good and replenish our energy, right? So, definitely, Dolores, you can plan activities that make you feel good and replenish your energy. But self care is also preventing things that deplete your energy, mitigating those energy depleting factors in your life. Are you eating well? Are you sleeping enough? Are you exercising? Are you in healthy relationships with good and healthy boundaries? How's your work? Are you managing stress? Are you preventing stress? So many aspects of self care go beyond wanting to feel good and replenish energy through activities. It's also a mindset and an attitude towards life. It's a lifestyle that goes beyond planned activities. It's about your values, even. What do you value as an individual? As I'm guessing you're a woman, Dolores, as a woman, as maybe a family, your values are part of your self care, because what are the things that you value the most? And maintaining those values requires energy, requires so much of you. So even your values are important to self care. Okay. Um, so write back to us and clarify a little bit more what exactly you're asking so we can be of better assistance. Okay, so let's move to the Grenadines, to Anna, who says there's such a rotten stigma in my country when it comes to mental health. You're very lucky in Canada, where the government helps people with their mental health and housing. And she says, I enjoy your show. I, you know what? Yes, Canada has a lot of resources, but I have to say they are quite limited. Just before we got onto this show, we were talking about the number of homeless Black folk that are in Toronto right now in the middle of this winter, freezing, literally freezing, because that's how cold this morning when I woke up, it was minus 10 degrees, and there are people that have to sleep outside in that. Every country has its shortfalls. But yes, Canada does have lots of resources, but there's more that could be done even here in Canada. Anna, tell us what you wish your country would do. But sometimes as communities, as society, it's easy for us to always blame the government. We forget that we are the ones who vote some of these people in. We are the ones who can advocate for more. But we can also put some of our own resources into creating better institutions and more resources for each other. Volunteering is something that we don't do enough of in a lot of our African and Black and Caribbean countries, like really. Maybe we view volunteering as working for free. Maybe we just are so exhausted from our daily grind. But sometimes what it takes is enough volunteers to create something. You don't always need your government, because the government, honestly, they have different agendas. Power and politics sometimes is not compassionate enough, but we as communities can be. So if there are opportunities for you to volunteer your time, collect blankets, collect food baskets, do whatever you can, nothing is too small. We can actually start creating some of the resources and institutions and systems that we need, that we desire. And in my experience, once you start on that journey of creating things within your community, you can always find one or two politicians who want to ride that wave with you. And they'll support you, they'll get you resources, and because it makes them look good. But maybe you need to do your part in volunteering your time, creating resources, and then looking for sponsors and politicians and that who will support you. Sometimes we can't afford to wait for the government to supply for our needs. Sometimes we have to do the work ourselves, and then the government will get involved. And I'm speaking this from experience. Some of you might know I'm the founder of a nonprofit organization, Future Black Female, because I saw the needs of Black girls and women here in Canada. I know from my own experiences how little there is for us in this country, designed for us with our unique needs in mind. So I created something. And I can tell you that since then, we have received a lot of support, monetary support from the government. But if I hadn't started Future Black Female, we would not be talking about any support for Black girls or women, especially in my region, from the government, because it wasn't there. So sometimes what we need to do is create something and then approach the government for support. Let's not always wait for them to create institutions and stuff for us, because honestly, politics and power is often not compassionate enough to meet our needs. That's my suggestion to you, Anna. Okay, let's go over to the Netherlands. And we're back on the topic of self-care. We have Maggie in the Netherlands who says your program on self-care was very interesting. How can I assess my physical and psychological needs and prioritize them accordingly? That's a great question, Maggie. And physical, the most, I would say, obvious response would be go for a physical checkup. This is something, especially as you get older, from your early 40s or so, go every 6 months for a physical with your physician. They will do blood tests, they will test this and that, but go and get a physical test. Don't always wait until you're sick to go to the doctor. Sometimes those symptoms come much later than we needed them to. And what I'm saying is, we can't always wait until we have symptoms. We should go for physical checkups. We should go once or twice a year as you get older. I would say if you're in your 40s, try and go once a year. By the time you get into your 50s, 60s, go twice a year. The older you get, go for a physical. Get tested so that if there's anything happening, it will be caught nice and early. But we often wait until we're very, very sick, and then we're going to the doctor. Prevention is better than cure. And how you prevent is by going for checkups. You have mammograms, you have pap smears, which is mammograms is testing for breast cancer. And it's not just for women, men get breast cancer too. So it's not a bad idea if you're a man, go and get tested, especially if there's a history of it in your family. Go for a mammogram. There's what are called pap smears, where I think they start, is it in your 40s or 50s? You go to your doctor, they take a sample of your stool, they send it to a lab, they examine it. This is good for things, certain cancers, prostate cancer, all of those things. Start doing these tests. But apart from that, go for a physical. Ask your doctor, I need a physical. I just want to know that I'm healthy. They'll take the bloods, they'll do all this, and you know you're good. The following year, go around the same time, but try and go for physical checks once or twice a year, the older you get, so that if there's anything, it will be caught on time. Prevention is better than cure. It's better to catch your cancer when it's in its early stages. And the thing is, with cancers, for example, we don't pay attention until the symptoms are really, really bad, which often means it has progressed to a critical level. And we want to prevent that. And then psychological needs. Now, you can't go to a psychiatrist every 6 months and say, hey, psychiatrist, I want a mental health test to see if I'm okay. They would probably laugh you out of the office or right there diagnose you with something simply for asking for that. So unfortunately, psychiatry doesn't work the same. But your stress levels, I always say check in on yourself as regularly, as often as possible. At the end of your day, as you're going to bed, you're preparing, just ask yourself that question. How are my stress levels today? You can even journal your stress levels. So you start to notice if every day you're experiencing a lot of stress, you will notice if you're paying attention and checking in on yourself. There are people who are very, very stressed and they don't even realize it because they're very, very stressed. So you need to learn how to check in on yourself. How was my stress today? Was I joyful today? How many times did I laugh today? How many times did I cry today? When so-and-so said that thing that made me angry, how long did it take me to get over it? Start quizzing yourself on your own state of mind. Check in on yourself. Play things over in your head, not to ruminate, not to dwell on things, but to check in on yourself. Where are you? In the morning when you wake up, ask yourself, am I feeling rested? That's a question I often ask my clients, especially when they are dealing with a lot of stress, when they are depressed, when they're anxious, really just anything. I will always ask them, when you wake up in the morning, do you feel rested? Too many of us wake up tired, which means our sleep is not effective. Too many of us are waking up tired. You just spend 12 hours in bed, but you get up tired. There's something wrong with that. So you need to examine your sleep hygiene. Are your sheets clean? Do you need new pillows? Is your room sufficiently dark? Is it too warm? Is it too cold? Is your mattress comfortable? Are you finding it hard to fall asleep? Do you have insomnia? Check in on yourself. If you don't do that, you don't realize how long you can go stressed, tired. Before you know it, you're burned out because you're not paying attention to your body and what it's telling you, to your mind and what it's telling you. So check in on yourself. You can write just 5 quick questions that you ask yourself every morning or every evening. How are my stress levels today on a scale of 1 to 10? Did I laugh enough? Did I eat healthy? Did I feel rested when I woke up? What else can I do better? Right? So you're evaluating so that you can improve. Quality improvement. Some of us do quality improvement at our work, in our jobs, but we don't do the same for ourselves. You're a quality improvement expert with the worst lifestyle ever. Some of these skills that we're so good at using in our jobs, we need to use for ourselves. Quality improvement. What can I do better? How can I improve my sleep? How can I improve my diet? How can I improve my lifestyle? So assess yourself by asking important, critical questions. And you don't just ask yourselves these questions, but once you've asked these questions, is there a way of improving this? And do that. Be intentional, be mindful, be aware of your everyday experience of life, of your energy levels, your happiness levels, your stress levels, your anger levels, any level, you need to be aware of it. The other day, I caught up with a friend I haven't spoken to, I think, since probably 2020, 2021. And she asked me, "Are you happy?" I said, "Yes, I am." And the only reason I could answer that is because I've been checking in on myself a lot more in the last. For those of you who listen all the time, I took a break. I think it was early fall, September, October. I took a mental health break from work generally, even from the mental health hour. I traveled to go eat, pray, and love, and all that. But even since I came back, one thing I've been meticulous about is checking in on myself. What is preventing my joy? Is there something I can do about it? If there's nothing I can do about it, I give it to God and I maintain my joy. So when she asked me that, I was able to actually answer her from a place of truth and reflection because I've been reflecting on it regularly. When something starts to creep in, I'm aware of it almost immediately because I've learned to check in on myself. I shared the kind of year I had last year, and it was horrible. But by the time it ended, it's not because everything had changed or I'd won the lotto or some miraculous thing. The only thing that had changed was my attitude. And because my attitude changed and I was checking in on myself a lot more, being meticulously intentional about my mental health, my well being, my joy, it has improved a lot of areas of my life. So even you just checking in on yourself, you become aware of those things that steal your joy, those things that weigh you down, especially the things you can't control that you just need to let go of sooner rather than later. A lot of us keep carrying things that we can't do anything about. And the longer you carry them, nothing changes. It actually gets worse because it gets heavier and heavier because there's nothing we can do about it. So if there's nothing you can do about it, put it down. Put it down, lighten your load. There's so many other things that you have control over. Most of all, your attitude. Pick that up. Put down these things we cannot change. Pick up your attitude, because I guarantee you, you have 100% control of your attitude towards life generally, towards your spouse, your kids, your parents, your neighbor's dog, your boss's wife, whoever. You have 100% control of your attitude. And that's the thing that you should be carrying. You should be meticulously intentional about your attitude towards anything that might happen to you. It's your attitude that will maintain your joy. I've read in so many places that one of the things that happy people talk about, or that makes people, it's just gratitude, just being grateful and appreciating even the small things in life. Your kids, is maybe you have one of those kids every morning, they'll make sure they come and say, good morning, mom, good morning. That's something to be grateful for. Because I guarantee you, there are some parents whose kids will grumble at them, mumble at them. Maybe they'll spend a week without seeing that child, and that child lives in the same house. But you have a kid that will every morning wake up, come find you to say good morning. Appreciate that. Don't be entitled to it. Appreciate it. Too much entitlement, because the thing with entitlement is the day it doesn't happen, you feel offended because you're entitled. Learn to appreciate things, even those things that you think are your right, your birthright, or your parental right, or your whatever right. Appreciate and be grateful. It's all about attitude. That's the one thing you can control no matter what happens in your life. The good, the bad, the ugly. The one thing you can control is your attitude towards all of it. That's what you should carry, rather than keeping on carrying burdens you cannot do anything about. I hope, Maggie in Netherlands, that's been helpful. Let's see now. So we've been to California, we've been to the Grenadines, Owen Sound, Mississauga. Oh, one of my favorite places on earth, Nigeria. So we have Ayo from Lagos, who says, I would like you to speak on gender-based violence and the serious repercussions and effects it has on the family, especially in Africa. You're absolutely right. Gender-based violence is serious. It's something that we started to speak about. I know there's another show here on Love Bay that focuses a lot more on gender-based violence. If you go on Love Bay's website, you can find more information on that, Io. But I absolutely agree with you. Gender-based violence, intimate partner violence has serious repercussions, and it affects, and it does affect families in Africa, in the world, anywhere. I think it was today there was a report released, 2022 report on gender-based violence. Was it by the UN or the World Health Organization? I can't quite remember. It was making its rounds on LinkedIn. But it's an important topic. But I think what we need to do is treat it more as an epidemic rather than a topic. Gender-based violence, intimate partner violence are one of those things that we all know are happening. We will often talk about behind closed doors. There's a huge stigma around it. There's a lot of guilt and shame, even from people that have been subjected to and victimized through gender-based violence. And there's children and young people that suffer the impact of living in a violent home. Most perpetrators of gender-based violence are men, boys and men. Statistics show that by the age of 15, a lot of girls would have experienced some sort of gender-based violence. Now, gender-based violence is not simply being beaten, but there's a lot more to it. Sexual assault is gender-based violence. Sexual abuse is gender-based violence. Name calling, belittling language, insults. So there's verbal violence as well. Attacks on social media, that's violence. So when we talk about gender-based violence, we're not just talking about when a man beats his woman or when a woman beats her man. Yeah. That is what we call intimate partner violence. But even with intimate partner violence, it goes beyond just beating. There's a lot more to it. And often it doesn't start with beating. It starts with certain words spoken in a certain way. It starts with verbal abuse. It starts with being isolated and controlled, being limited in your human rights and freedoms. But we often don't talk about these other incidents. In fact, sometimes we normalize them. And that is where our problem is. We treat it as a topic. We normalize certain behaviors as our culture, as our religion, as just the way we talk or just the way we do things. Or I years ago when I was dating, I dated this one guy who said something, keep it mean to keep them keen. And basically what he was saying is there's a practice of being mean, because the more mean and standoffish and cruel you are to a person, the idea is it keeps them keen. They'll keep chasing you. They keep wanting you. They'll keep, and that in itself is violent, because what it does is it destroys a person's self-esteem. So gender-based violence affects a person in many ways, not just physically. It affects them mentally, it affects them spiritually, it affects them emotionally, financially as well. We know in a lot of societies, in a lot of communities, women, girls are especially at risk because they don't have the financial means to look after themselves, to find safety. So they stay in these belittling, violent situations. So when we talk about gender-based violence, we need to understand there's more to it than somebody hit someone or somebody beat someone. There's way more to it than that. And we need to address all of it, not just talk about it, but mitigate it, prevent it, have strategies to address it. And we need to be able to rely on law enforcement, police officers. It's unfortunate that in some, like, I love Nigeria. I absolutely love Nigeria. I've been there a number of times and it's one of my favorite places in the world. And recently I was there. And while I was there, one of my relatives there showed me a clip, and it was of a young girl who, I guess she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, said the wrong thing to the wrong person. And there are these 5 burly police officers in Nigeria beating this girl, She was a small little thing, and these men were beating her. And they are the law enforcement. They are the police officers. Their job should be to protect, not be the one beating this girl. But we see that in many societies, in many places, where the strong and powerful victimize the weaker and the more vulnerable. And unfortunately, most of the times it's girls and women who are at higher risk. She couldn't fight, she couldn't protect herself, there was nothing. And they were not beating her, like, they were fully into it, beating this one little girl for saying something that they didn't like. So there's violence in our homes, there's violence outside of our homes. And who is supposed to prevent this violence? We wish the police would. But we know, even here in the West, in Canada, we can't trust the police to protect us from violence. A lot of times they are perpetrators themselves. We know of cases where people were arrested and somehow died within the prison walls, and there's no explanation for it. Young women arrested. I know there was an Indigenous girl who died in prison, and no one could explain what happened. She was perfectly healthy, there was no issue, but she didn't leave those walls alive. And the only people in that station with her were police officers. So this gender-based violence is everybody's responsibility. We cannot say, well, the police will handle it. No, they won't. In most cases, they don't, even here in the West. And so we have women being killed by rejected men. If I can't have you, no one will have you. How dare you reject me? You will pay for it. And they lose their lives. We have little girls being beaten by their brothers, by their fathers, by their uncles, because they're girls. And men have been given this power and authority, even if it's just a boy who's not mature enough to know how to use his power. And he uses it to beat and subjugate and victimize and bully his own sibling. I've seen mothers cower in front of their sons because she's a woman, he's a man. Maybe the father died, and now the son is now the head of the home and can even victimize his own mother. Power is not always a bad thing. What makes power bad is how it is used. And some of us need to get that power to address gender-based violence and do something about it. I'm going to leave it there. And I look forward to being here again next week. Send your questions, send your comments. 437-778-3299 or email infolovebay@gmail.com. What would you like us to talk about over the next few months? Let's plan our calendar. Send your questions, send your topics. Let's support each other to become healthier, happier societies, healthier, happier families and individuals. Let's make 2024 that year when we broke through some of those mental health barriers and achieved a healthier mental status. It's always a pleasure to spend this time with you. I wish you a wonderful rest of the week. I look forward to hearing from you. Remember to be kind to each other, to be compassionate. If you're here in Canada, I hope you have someone to cuddle with because it is cold. It is cold. It is very cold up in here. Thank you, Love Bay family. See you next week.